as we look at these different kind of knowledge sources, you're going to find variation in capabilities. And when you build an agent, you've got to build the capabilities that you want into it. So Microsoft 365 Graph is what I consider to be the key to driving knowledge into these agents, right? These agents, they're not ignorant. Why? Because they're all founded in knowledge. If we build an agent that has no knowledge, guess what? We're going to get bad results. So every time we think about agents, we should be thinking about what knowledge supports that agent. And the fortunate thing about M365 Copilot is it is built in with Microsoft Graph, which means you really don't have to upload anything. If it exists already in the cloud, it can be referenced in your chat experience and up to you and your agents, right? So we're going to actually do a quick build together. Let's do a quick build just for those, that 10% also who has never built agents, so that you can see what this feels like. I'm going to do it in M365 Copilot first, but I will show you that it's equally as easy in Copilot Studio. So basically, when you get there, and getting there is not hard, right? You look for your app launcher, and when you find your app launcher, you click on Microsoft 365 Copilot. If you're a geek that likes to memorize URLs, think M365 Cloud and you'll find it, okay? And once you're in there, you can click on All Agents, and this will give you a view of all of the art of the possible. There's many different agents, not only agents that you have built or your company has built, but Microsoft has built some for you, and partners are building them for you, all right? So you have an agent store that you should kind of pay attention to, because lots of fun new things happen in there. All right. But you can either click the create an agent in there, or you can click this create an agent button at the top. Either way, you're doing fine. And then you're going to be thrown into a user experience that's optimized for getting help from the AI and testing the experience all in one screen, right? Now, I'd like you, especially those of you that are brand new to this, to go to the Describe tab, because you don't have to know how to configure this. Guess what? That's what Copilot's job is, to configure it for you. You just tell it what you want. So here I'm going to create an agent, and you just type in English, right? Or whatever language you speak. You're able to use other languages. I'd like to create an agent that will provide healthy recipes for quick, low-carb lunches during the work week. That's the agent I want. And maybe it's a group of us at work, because this is an internal solution. This is intended for internal audiences, right? So we want to get together, we want to get healthier, and we're trying low carb. So I'm going to send that to the agent. Now, the agent begins to evaluate what I'm saying to it. And in some cases, it'll ask clarifying questions. In other cases, it'll suggest things, but it's working with me. Can everybody see? I saw Vasavi come off mute. Mute everything okay, Vasavi?
Sorry, that was probably by mistake, muting myself.
Okay. No, just making sure. Okay. So basically it is deciding what I've asked, and then it's checking with me. Okay. I've already set up this agent for you, right? What did I do? Everybody? I just said what I wanted, right? It even added conversation starters. Anybody in the chat want to share why is a conversation starter important? Other brave users, how would you answer the question, why is a conversation starter important? And I'll just show you that on the configure. That's over here on the right. Yes, everybody's putting the right answers in there. It guides the users on how to use it. And one of the things I like about them is it surfaces the features that are available. Because how would a user know what they can do with that agent unless somebody gives them a clue? And the conversation starters are clues. And it's already configured all of that for me. Look at this list of instructions that Copilot did for me. I didn't have to type anything. It got what I was saying. Now, do I have to review this? Yes, I do. I have to read it and make sure I agree with what it's saying. And if I agree with what it's saying, I can move on, right? And let me see. You know what? I might just, you know what? You can try this with me. If you have access to M365, try the same agent, and you'll see that you'll get similar results, right? Now, if I decide, look at the name it gave me, quick low carb lunch recipes. I'm not crazy about that name. I can go back to describe and say, can you give me like 5 catchy names for this? Like maybe that name I'm not crazy about. I don't even have to pick a name myself. It'll help me, right? Just amazing to me how we don't have to do much. We have to validate with AI, but for the most part, it's doing the work for us. So look, it gives me 5 little catchy titles that I can use, and I can decide to change it or not. I'm not going to change it right now. But I just want you to know you can do that. And if you tell it to change it, it will change it. I can even tell it to add a website, right? In this case, what I'm going to add is a document. So I'm going to go over to the configure tab, because not only that I want to show new users how easy it is to create an agent, I want to point out to you what this webinar is about. It's about knowledge. And so you'll see that in the section here when you build an agent in Microsoft 365 Copilot. You'll see it as a tab and a setting in Copilot Studio, and we'll go there in a minute. But I'm just going to upload my file, right? So my doctor gave me a PDF that I can use to help understand the best way to eat low carb for diabetes, right? And I can just upload that. And now I actually have this agent prepared with knowledge that is relevant to what I expect the users to do. I want you to watch as it spins here, this little circle of hope. As long as it's spinning, you're good. And what it means is this file has to be indexed and chunked. And we'll talk about chunking in the second half. But it's not going to be read word for word when it goes to answer questions. It's going to be able to identify where relevance is to the intent. Okay. And we'll talk about more of that in the second half, but all of you new users should feel like, wow, that was easy, because all I'm going to do is press the create button. All right. And my agent is going to be created. And that took me being able to prompt. And that's why we're going to spend just a few minutes in this first half talking about optimizing prompts for your knowledge sources. And we're going to start with optimizing prompts for the M365 Copilot, right? So I'm going to go to the agent as soon as it lets me, right? And of course, I could have tested over here, by the way. I didn't mention that to you. This panel on the right, I use it as a visual test if I know it will work. But in more complex situations, I might actually test right there. As soon as I'm done, I click go to agent, and now the agent is live and working. And so it's the kind of thing that you just you make it and you run. So what's the hard part for you users are saying, wow, if it's that easy, then why are you here? Well, because there's a lot of things you have to think about when you're planning an agent. And one of the most important thing is how you're going to equip it with knowledge. You have to ask yourself, if you're working in Microsoft 365, is Graph enough? Okay, if you're working in Copilot Studio, I'll let you know the big difference between Copilot Studio is that is a clean slate. It's a blank canvas for you. It is not pre-configured with Microsoft Graph. When you go into an agent, and I'll just pick up an agent here that I have here. This is, let's take this one. And I'm going to go into the settings. This is what is pre-configured in Copilot Studio, which is different from what you get out of the box in Microsoft 365, okay? In your settings, right, if you scroll down on that first generative AI page, you will see another section called knowledge, okay? And this section is really important because by default, both of these are turned off, which means your agent will say, I don't know, to any question asked right now, because it has no knowledge grounding it, nothing. It's a clean canvas, right? If you say use general knowledge, you're saying use the knowledge you have from your model training. Feel free to use that. But keep in mind, model training is dated, okay? Because once the model is released and goes live, there's no further training. That's why you don't have to worry about your data training a model, because the model has been trained and that date is past, all right? So if I ask, who's the president of the United States, and the model ended in July of last year, we might have a different president, right? Because that data is dated, all right? Whereas if we turn on use information from the web, we're allowing it to use the web as a source of information. And there it's using indexed websites, okay, that are visible in Bing publicly, okay? So by default, though, neither one is on. And I will say that I do know situations where you want to use one or the other, and there's other situations where you don't. But if you have both of these off, what this agent is counting on is, I'm going to leave settings by clicking the X here. It's counting on you going to this knowledge tab and feeding it some information. Okay? All right. So this is the UI for knowledge in Copilot Studio, which we'll talk about this afternoon. The other one is the UI for knowledge in M365 Copilot. And the big tip I want to give you about M365 Copilot is it facilitates a lot of your internal scenarios, usually starting with personal productivity. And I have some prompts here that I'm going to put in the chat for you. And I encourage you to run these prompts in your own tenant if you can. All right. Because this will help you to see what I mean by prompting with the Microsoft Graph in mind, like recognizing the value of all of that, all those services involved there. So I've pasted those in there so you could try these out. But there's basically 4 categories of things that I will focus on with Graph when it comes to Microsoft 365. First, I want to remind you, those prompts that I gave you, they are optimized in that they're not just what's the date today or who's the president today. It's basically a task, and you support your prompt with context. You support your prompt with examples. Now, as you go down this list of things that make your prompt stronger, the most important is the top and the least as important as the bottom. Like a tone might be, speak in a professional, friendly, funny manner, be witty. That's not necessary for optimized results unless it matters to what your end user experience should be. But please do avoid incomplete prompts. This is prompts where you're saying things like, when is the election? I think all of you can recognize why that is a bad prompt. AI, although it's artificial intelligence, it doesn't read minds. It has no idea what we're thinking, right? And so if we give it limited information, one of 2 things will happen. Most services, such as M365 Copilot, will ask clarifying questions. But many services do not ask clarifying questions, and therefore it will take a guess. And that's called an hallucination. Some hallucinations are correct, which means they're harder to see, right? But as a maker, you want to make sure that you're not provoking hallucination by leaving out necessary dependencies or allowing your users to give incomplete information. This is kind of really important because prompting's at the root, right? It's like the first thing you'll do is use prompts for personal productivity. Then you'll share them with others and create team consistency. Then you'll create these specialized mini agents, which can grow up to be agents on your website, etc. Right? Here are the 4 areas I think you get with M365 Copilot out of the box. You offload your busy work, right? And I don't know if I can show you this real quick. I don't know if everybody knows this, but when you hit a /, you can now reference anything in Graph whether it be a document, a file, or anything like that. And you'll see these placeholders when you go, and I'm just going to open up a previous chat that doesn't get me in trouble. Let's see. Let's do this one. And if I open up a previous chat, what happens is after it answers you, there's a little symbol here called view prompts. I want you to notice that. Now, if you're saying to yourself, Audrey, why are they hiding that little symbol? You can also type aka.ms/prompt gallery and it'll open the same thing. Okay. What this is a whole bunch of suggested prompts. And every time you see that slash, it means you can reference content in your powerful knowledge source, Microsoft Graph. All right. And Graph is not just looking at documents. It's not just looking at sites. It's also looking at relevant people to you. So I could select this one, right? And then backslash my manager's name, right? And now I've got all the information that my manager hoped I saw earlier, but I didn't, right? So now I can see it, right? It sometimes puts things in brackets, which means that you replace it with the language you want. So these suggestions help you practice prompting. And I'm telling you, not all prompters are agent makers, but all agent makers are good prompters. And that's because it's at the root of giving instructions to the AI. Notice that you have even areas where you can ask for specific types of task. Help me understand. Maybe my job type is marketing. And then in that case, I might choose create, right? So from a marketing perspective, I want to do these kind of things. You can even, all of the agents that you've installed have their own starter prompts. These help you find those starter prompts for the different agents, all right? And two of my favorite agents, I'll just tell you this secret, don't tell anybody, is researcher and analyst. There are two of the out-of-the-box agents that everybody gets. And the beautiful thing, and I'm just going to clear these, because these are so much more than a task-driven thing. Researcher and analysts have algorithms behind them. They are not standard agents. You would have a hard time building a researcher agent yourself unless you know code, right? Because there are algorithms incorporated in these that help do things automatically that we used to like require Power BI to do a chart and require Power BI to crunch data. Now we can crunch it from natural language using Analyze and Researcher. So my point here is practice prompts a little bit before you start building your agents. And you'll notice that prompts can be combined with instructions to create wonderful agents. But get started kind of understanding prompting. Does anybody in the room want to share what they got from one of the prompts or kind of share if they saw any value in the prompts I shared in the chat? Totally up to you. If you don't feel comfortable, that's okay. Because this is personal productivity. So some of those prompts are going to give back things you don't want to share. So that's so true. And here at Microsoft, we curate prompts. So, and I can tell you, I'll put it in the link. So everything I'm sharing with you will be in a deck that I'm sharing with you in a PDF format. You'll have all the links, but we curate. And one of the things we use is something called Prompt Buddy. It's an app in Power App that will enable you in Power Apps that will help you find prompts based on what service you're in. Because as you all know, or maybe some of you don't, Copilot exists in every service at Microsoft. We have released over 80 different scenarios for Copilots across the Microsoft stack. So you're going to find it in many places, such as your Office applications, right? And my favorite that I think in Office that I enjoy every day is Teams. Teams has a wonderful Copilot. So those kind of things for you to understand, like what are the value, also are inspirational for what kind of agents you should build. All right, so let's go back a minute so I have given you these different prompts to try, but in every case, I want you to think about scale opportunities. And what I mean by that is sometimes when we prompt, we're thinking about ourselves. But we can also say to ourselves, how could this prompt benefit my team, right? Like, list the top 5 takeaways from ServiceNow article. If we've got articles in ServiceNow that everybody needs to know, maybe we should make an agent that has those articles as a knowledge source, and now people can query on them at any time, right? So knowledge sources aren't rocket science. They're where's the information that supports what this particular agent is serving? What type of user? What persona? And here's where you have to really think about intent. And I just want to share you one personal experience that I had, and that's this prompt up here. I'm preparing for Microsoft certificate, blah, blah, blah. Give me 10 sample questions. I actually earned 2 Microsoft certifications this way. So I would give it a try. And here's a big tip for you when it comes to working with confidence, as well as the idea of brainstorming with the agent. Download the mobile app for Microsoft 365 Copilot, because you can press the little phone icon that looks like this and have a conversation with the AI while you're going for a walk. Here you are going for your walk, trying to get your steps in for the day. I'm preparing a strategy for our release of product X. Help me put together some ideas for how I can structure blah, 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 blah. It'll talk back to you. You can reason back and forth. And one of the things that I like about oral conversation with agents is it also takes away the stress of how you're typing. You're not evaluating your grammar and spelling. You're not evaluating its grammar or spelling. You've moved into a collaborative mode. So I suggest you try that when you have time. I've done a bunch of agents. So I have at least half a dozen for myself, and then I've shared others with friends who I know are doing similar things. But I really enjoy using Microsoft 365 Copilot to create these really speedy 5-minute agents. I mean, I'm 5 minutes, I'm done, and then I can share it with whoever I like. And, life just moves on. I like that you tried the Star Wars one. So, by the way, in the chat, I'm reading that someone tried the prompt with Star Wars. You can replace the terms for Star Wars with Star Trek if you want to. If you're a fan, because usually you're either one or the other, you can switch it up. You can make that prompt adjust if you like Star Trek better or if you like Star Wars better. But what I'm saying is think about times when situations need to be repeatable, reusable, and then leverage prompts. Now, before I go to Copilot Studio, I just want to point out a particular tool that people tend to forget. And that is up here. When you send a prompt, you have the ability to edit it, which will kick it back into here so you can clone and revise. But you also have a way to copy it. You have a way to save it. When you save it, it goes into that prompt gallery, and now you can also share it. All right, but this is reusable, and you can also schedule it. In most cases, you can schedule prompts as well so that it happens every Friday. One of the things that I love to do is sometimes I'll love this chat. It turned out wonderful, and maybe Darian asked me a question related to this chat. Did you know you could actually share chats? Right? So it's not like you have to, at the bottom of after what they say, you just click the share button. It will give you a link. And now the person who gets that link will see that whole conversation. And now they can continue it even after it's been completed. Right? So it's kind of cool. But I just wanted you to know about those little things, because I really feel like optimizing your skills in prompting is really going to help you build better agents. So let's go to Copilot Studio. Unless somebody has questions on M365 Copilot, the rest of this will be a little bit more about Copilot Studio. I feel like I should stop and ask if anybody has any questions. Are we good? Okay, if we're good. I will move on.
I have one question.
Okay.
Sorry.
Audrey, if you want to do 2 questions, that'll be good. So go ahead, guys. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thanks. One is, once you have created your M365 Copilot agent, how do you copy it to Copilot Studio? Do you need to publish it in Copilot Studio to publish it in a SharePoint site, or can you just only share it if it's a Microsoft 365 Copilot? So wondering about this.
This is a question that's been on our radar for a while, and expect that to get easier in the future. Can I tell you, I'm gonna have to parking lot that question because it's a complicated question and it has three parts to it. But I will include that question at the end of the deck. Any of your questions that I don't answer, I'm gonna put them at the end of the deck along with the answer, which will probably be links to what your options are for that. Okay.
Super. Thank you.
So it's just a little bit out of the scope of this discussion, but I appreciate your question. There was another one on knowledge sources.
I had a question. Yeah, can you speak to the how the M365 agent interacts with the knowledge sources? Like for example, if an agent is looking to a document that's stored in a SharePoint site, is that agent pulling that information in real time, instantly, or is it batched? Is it scraped? So if the agent were to look at this document that's in a SharePoint site for its output, is it going to be up to the minute real, or is it pulling it at certain times of day? Is it batched? Is it chunked?
No, you could count on it being real time, and depending on what type of integration you have. So with M365 Copilot, you're using a semantic index. You have the full license using a semantic index, which is looking at the meaning or the intent of your question, and then looking for relevance throughout that index that's in SharePoint. Now, but there's two little areas, and I'm glad you asked the question because it leads me to kind of talk about this a little bit. SharePoint integration with Copilot Studio is a bit different than M365. M365 is just leveraging graph. So if you most likely, if you go to the Graph Explorer and you search for that same thing, it'll come up in the same way, right? But the semantic index is going to help the AI know where it's relevant to the content on the site. And there are limitations, right? So in SharePoint with M365, you can kind of count on graph always being your buddy. It's going to use the index that's in graph. It's going to be from the last change of that document. Well, all of that will be relevant. You won't be waiting for any synchronization or anything like that. However, in Copilot Studio, it depends on how you do that. As to how it operates in the back end, right? So I'll put some details in the back of the deck on kind of what we expose as far as the engine behind M365 Copilot. But I think more importantly is I want you to understand how this differs in Copilot Studio, because like I said, Copilot Studio has no graph in it. Until you put something, it has nothing, right? So when you hit knowledge, especially with SharePoint, and I did notice a lot of people are using SharePoint, you have these 2 button choices. And these 2 buttons make a difference into how the RAG is going to take place, how the retrieval of the answer is going to take place. Did I skip somebody's hand? If not, I'm going to...
Just a quick heads up. We are at 9:38 right now, so just wanted to give you the heads up. Yeah. Sorry, I'm 8 minutes late.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine. So basically, I do want to talk about this because it's relevant to your question. With M365, there's an engine behind. You don't have to worry about synchronization. You don't have to worry about any of that. But I will send you whatever we have as far as what we surface as our backend engine. But in any LLM, you have scenarios where the item is added to an index, right? And basically, when you're doing structured content like lists, that's also different from documents because lists are already structured. You don't have to structure them. Whereas documents, when you upload them, they need to receive a type of structure so the AI doesn't have to read it from front to back. We ain't got time for that, right? So it's chunked. and I'll talk to you about chunking briefly as well, but I want to start with these two buttons because it is the big difference between Copilot Studio and M365 Copilot, all right? So first, when you use this button up here, the reason it's up here is because, does anybody know when you upload a file, you didn't press any button, but you uploaded a file, where's that file stored? Anybody know? Just throw it in the chat if you know. I love all these smart people. That's awesome. So yes, uploaded files go to Dataverse. But did you know that when you click this SharePoint button and you pick files, they are also going to Dataverse? I don't know if you knew that. Say yes in the chat if you did. Say no in the chat if you didn't, right? But actually, it is doing a synchronization. It should be fast enough for you not to notice, but I have a page that explains how that synchronization works. But in that case, the file in SharePoint is being synchronized and brought into Dataverse to give you a stronger semantic index and a faster result. And we have found really great results with this approach, right? The only thing you have to keep in mind is the capacity limitations, which I've included in the deck already for you so that you have them. There are some capacity limitations. Now, those of you that worry about security, don't worry. We do a permissions check anytime we give a user an answer. So we're never going to give a user an answer from a document they don't have access to on SharePoint. All right. That is a commitment because security is number one to us. There's nothing more important. So you don't have to worry about people getting the wrong content. But I do want you to know that the document is being synchronized. So there's a version in SharePoint and there's a version in Dataverse. All right. Whereas when you do this one is closer to what you experience basically with Microsoft 365 Copilot, right? So when I add a site or I browse items here, this is not, none of this is going into Dataverse. We're talking to the SharePoint index, and then we're retrieving answers in that way, all right? So you can see, okay, I'm having fun with I didn't pay my demo god this morning, and so I might have some problems. Let's see if I can leave. I can't even leave. So I'll come back to it. I'm going to go back to the deck and I'll come back because I think it'll just clear up in a minute. I'm just going to go forward to where this is in the slide. Oh, everything is slowed down for me. I'm talking while it's loading and trying to catch up because I think it'll settle in a minute. I've seen this happen a couple of times during Teams meetings. So basically, what you want to remember is that if you use that top button, you're syncing with Dataverse, right? If you use the bottom button, you're hitting the SharePoint index in a normal way for queries, right? Because what happens is there's a query that occurs when you send a question to an LLM or to the agent, it's going to determine what is the proper query to send to the index. And this is really important. Okay, we're just having all kinds of, let's see where I can go over here. Let me just switch to a different tenant. See if that helps. See if we can get to Bing. When you are, and this is very important, not only for SharePoint users, for anybody, every time you ask a question and you send a query or you make a statement to an agent, it has to determine what is that intent, right? And if you want to check out, we do talk about orchestration and Power Up. We go into that. But I don't know why I've just kind of like my speed is slowing up. Actually, I may have to restart because, okay, wait. I've got, it might be the computer. So, because I'm clicking and nothing's happening. So I'm going to go back to the deck. And I'm going to go back to SharePoint in a minute and see if it resets. I don't want to restart and come back if I don't have to. But basically, when you're working in Copilot Studio, you have to choose with SharePoint whether you'd like to sync with Dataverse your documents or whether you want to use the bottom button. Now, the bottom button is the only choice you have for sites, for pages. And remember that with pages on SharePoint, you don't get all pages you only get modern pages. So if you have classic pages on your sites, the agent will not see those classic pages. And you know what I've seen people do? Like they'll create a document library and then they'll go make an agent right away. And then when they make the agent, right, either the ready button or the answers are really slow because you have to wait for the SharePoint index to catch up. So sometime I'll do a search in SharePoint first. And then after I do the search in SharePoint, it gives me back an answer. Now I know my agent can see that, right? And then I'll wait for the ready that I'm going to show you as soon as I can. All right, give me 1 minute. I'm going to stop sharing for 1 minute and just see if I can reset this device.
Audrey Hazem was mentioning there probably have been some technical issues with Teams, PowerPoint Live, and everything. So sorry about that, but let us know if there's anything we can help with.
Okay, give me 1 minute. I think I can resolve. Have faith in me. And also, if you want to ask questions, I can answer questions while I'm clicking.
I have a question. I hope it's a simple one.
Okay.
So I would love to know if there's a way we can make certain knowledge sources as reference only for the agent. Because I noticed when the agent gives answers to the user, it will include citations of that knowledge. So is there a way to make the agent not reference certain knowledge?
Okay, so there's a couple of ways to think about that. And yes, I can explain it even though I still can't get this screen up. Hold on. I'm going to try switching to a different tenant. But yes. But there's a nuance to that. Okay, so just let me show you. Let me try this one. I'm switching tenants to see if that helps. There's 3 ways to think about this, right? No, there's 4. In Microsoft 365 Copilot, in that knowledge section that I just showed you a few minutes ago, right? Mm-hmm. There is the ability to say, only use what I uploaded. So in that section, there is a use only these sources that I've just added here. And that will stop having it search the rest of M365 Graph, Microsoft Graph, and just search the things that you added. Now, with Copilot Studio, when you add knowledge sources, and I can show you this in the deck, I believe. When you add knowledge sources, we have added something new there that might help with that situation just recently. And I'm going to share screen of my deck again. Hopefully you'll see this in a couple of seconds. You can say on the bottom of this knowledge. So when you add knowledge, you get a detailed page. And on the bottom of that detailed page is an area you might not notice that we added recently. We didn't have this before, where you can say you can use this knowledge at any time, or you can use it only when referenced with topics. So that's one thing, okay? That's one option. Other option is if you have a topic, right? And you have a generative answers node in that topic, then that topic can have knowledge sources restricted to itself alone, right? Because it has a select the knowledge sources you'd like to use. It shows you all the knowledge sources, but then you pick the one that you want to be used for that intent. And then we also have, if you add the advanced, right, you'll see that there's a custom search. Custom search also helps you pick the exact knowledge sources that you want used in the context of that intent. All right. Now, does that help to answer your question? I just gave you a whole bunch of choices there. Did I give you too much?
Yes, no, that was great. I think my only follow-up is, can we turn off the agent from giving citations to that knowledge source. Like, what if we just want it to be a generative AI answer, but we don't actually want to give the user, how it has a citation of, say, like, a list that it got that information from, just because it's like a working copy for the agent.
I get you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not the first to come up with this great idea. It's awesome. But I'm going to pitch my team's blog. We have a brand new blog called the Custom Engine, and I love it. The link is in the deck, and I'm also going to go there if I can in a minute. I'll try again to get back to the browser. The Custom Engine has a blog on how exactly to manipulate citations, whether you want to change them or remove them. It's in the blog. So I'll make sure that article is called out again at the back of the deck. All of your questions, I will put the answer underneath them in the back of the deck so that you can find these links. But I have to plug my team's blog because all of you who consider yourself advanced, you want to read the Custom Engine. It's an awesome blog. And that's one of the things that's called out. Any other questions?
So much.
No problem. Yeah, no problem. Any other questions that you can think of? I'm going to try again, but otherwise we can move this into Q&A if I'm not able to demo. Try again.
While you're getting that figured out, Audrey, we can do the feedback now, if that's okay with you while you're getting...
Sure, feedback or questions, either way.
Cool.
Are we doing the poll?
So the poll, we can do the poll because that might give us something to discuss as well before we close out. Can you run that poll, Darian, without me? So can you share screen?
Yeah, sure. Ashley, can you share?
Sorry, folks. Darian, a quick thought. Like, I think, Audrey, you have your demo screen up. Rather than switching screen share, we can paste the poll link in chat and also the results. That way you can continue with the demo and we can still get feedback for the question.
Okay. All right. So that last question is a ranking question. That poll question, you'll see when you get, I'm still not able to, I can't get in. So I'm not sure why I can't get in, but I'm happy to answer all of your questions. And I apologize that my demo, somehow I've slowed down to a crawl, but I'm happy to answer any of your questions. And if you ask a question, you say, send me a screenshot, I'll make sure I put it in the deck as well. And I think the key that I wanted you to kind of understand with SharePoint is those two options, but also understanding the value of having a license of Microsoft 365 Copilot. That license gives you a better semantic index for your queries. And so whenever you can have at least one of those licenses in your tenant, it will help you get better answers, especially for those of you that have suffered from some challenges with SharePoint. And Darian pasted a link in here for anyone that's having problem dealing with answers in SharePoint. You'll be able to use that link, and it has a lot of tips. And just on the things that I wanted you to recognize is I did want to talk to you just briefly. I know we have 5 minutes left about optimizing your agents by vetting your knowledge sources. And what I mean by that is all knowledge sources are not equal, which means that some of them are better than others, right? And so when you're dealing with knowledge sources, take the time to look at the content that you are planning to use as knowledge source and make sure that it is responding to the intent you expect from your users. That's something that I think is really important to think about. And we'll have to have a follow-up webinar so I can kind of show you how to do that, because we couldn't do it today, but we'll just have to have a follow-up to go over those steps. I see someone's hand up, and it just looks like oh to me.
Oh, yeah. So I just wanted to ask about, since you touched on licensing. So just to confirm, we create the agent in Studio, not M365, but in Studio, and we share it with users. Those users don't need a license, right?
So you're saying when you create an agent in Copilot Studio, you're asking if your users need a license.
Correct.
So I will say that you shouldn't expect any extra licensing than what the services are that you're offering. So that's why I second if then statement. I'm sorry. If you're on a website, for instance, right, and you've got a chatbot on that website and you've got anonymous access, then no license is going to be required, right? If you've got a maker, the maker has to have a license to create the thing. And if you're publishing to teams, that have to have a Teams license. So I guess you'd have to have licenses for the host if you're just a user.
Okay. Oh yeah.
And what I will do is I'll add the licensing. Yeah, I'll add the licensing. Yeah. So I don't think you do. I'd rather leave you a link to the licensing guide because I'm not a licensing SME. But
yeah,
I just wanted to say that you do have to have a license for whatever the host is, if you're in that host. But the maker is the primary license owner for the agent itself.
Sounds good. Thanks.
You're welcome. No other questions? I'm surprised. Okay, so
there's a question. It looks like Miguel has his hand raised.
Yes.
Hi, Miguel.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome, great job. I know you dealt with everything when you do live demos. Always pops up. Trust me, I understand the pain. I just had a quick question, and this is kind of just, I guess, your general knowledge. I know there's moving into Azure, or like Azure AI Search, depending on the material you're referencing as knowledge. Is there like a rule of thumb when you're building an agent, depending on the knowledge that you're pointing to, size or the type of knowledge, where you say this is not going to be something built, using Copilot Studio, we should look into other options such as like Azure, and of course the list goes on and on. Is there like a rule of thumb, I guess you can say, because customers have, I'm looking at this PDF for it's this big and that big, I'm getting answers that are kind of wacky. Is there a rule of thumb? Would it be nice to be like, look, let's not continue this path, we need to start looking at something else, maybe Dataverse or things like that?
Yes. So yes, I will say that there are you want to think about the scenario first as to which tool for what. And like I said to you earlier, I really believe that many internal scenarios are facilitated just by Microsoft 365 Copilot, because it has graph. And unless you need a lot of other actions or scenarios that are more complex, usually Microsoft 365 is your friend. If you're using Copilot Studio and you're trying to decide on knowledge sources, then of course it's always going to depend on what you're supporting, what scenario you're supporting. So it does change. There is capacity limitations, right? You can't have a file, 100 gigs in size because the agent can't chunk that, right? So I have a link to all of our capacity limitations in the back of the deck as well, which gives you a way to see, okay, what doesn't it do? And I'll give you one example. Really large files where relevance is scattered all over the place. Like if I ask the question, there's a NASA art file PDF. If I ask the question, where's the next mission? And that mission is discussed in 15 different areas of that doc, at the beginning, at the end, in the middle. It may require custom chunking. And I wanted to talk about chunking, but custom chunking, you would use Azure for that. And then you would know to create your specifications on how you want that chunked, because you might want to cut that file into several pieces, which you could also do with Copilot Studio, as opposed to having a huge file. Cut it into pieces based on the intent. First half is missions, second half is something else, and then you're going to get better results than if you just give it a huge file where the intent is scattered all over the place.
Awesome. That does give some clarity. I'm looking forward to that deck. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi, I have a question that's maybe it's a bit off topic, but when you upload a SharePoint file that is indexed to Dataverse,
Yes.
I think it today is not supported if you export this agent to another environment. Is that correct? And if it's so, when is going to be supported? Like when you have like a pipeline to dev environment to product environment, this kind of
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. And I don't want to take a chance on answering that wrong. So let me take that question to my peer who handles ALM and kind of get a better answer for you, and then I'll drop it in the deck. I don't know when we're going to support moving things around that way. And my screen did just light up, but the meeting is over. Any other questions? I see hands. How about AO? Allison?
Yeah, I just did.
That was you? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next hand I see up is, I can't even dare try to pronounce that. Is Carrie.
Just a heads up. So we have 3 more minutes, everybody. So yeah, go ahead, Audrey, please.
Yeah, Ernesto Izquierdo, that's me. So for building a RAG on a SharePoint library with hundreds of docs, is it better to use Copilot Studio linked to a SharePoint library, or is it better to use Azure AI Search, or should I build a Copilot Studio Lite agent and then plug Researcher into it to get really strong results? What would you advise?
So you said you have 100 documents. You have 100 documents?
200 documents, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. SharePoint handles that. M365 Copilot handles that. Copilot Studio handles that. Dataverse handles that. It will handle that.
Okay. Any how to say
this? So I'll give you some tips with your documents. Just make sure they're living up to the file size limitations. And again, I will send you a link, but the file size limitations can depend on whether you have a Microsoft Copilot, a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. This actually gets you larger file sizes, and so does Dataverse. So I will make sure you have that link, because you have to kind of determine where the capacity limits are based on which knowledge source it is, how large the files are, and where that knowledge is going to live, right? Which index is going to sit in. Okay. Yeah. Keep that in mind. I warn people about large documents with pictures sometime. You know why? Because when you upload files with pictures, very often the chunking gets thrown off because it'll split the picture from the topic that it's under. So I would be careful with large files with pictures all over them, because sometimes they can impact how we ascertain relevance in the file.
Okay, super. Thank you. Many thanks.
No problem.
Hi, this is...
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Audrey. It was really good presentation you did. Can you explain, you mentioned about using the SharePoint link and Dataverse. I did not get that quite clear. Can you just explain?
Sure.
Probably quick,
sure.
1 minute. Yeah.
And it is the biggest thing, right, that differs between SharePoint with M365 Copilot and SharePoint with Copilot Studio, because Copilot Studio has 2 methods of entry for SharePoint, right? You can use the button on the top, which is for documents, right? But those documents that you use in that SharePoint button at the top, they are going to be in Dataverse. So they'll be stored. It's like it takes a copy of the SharePoint file and puts it in Dataverse. Right. And once it's in Dataverse, it will have to be synced. Right. So it'll be synced with SharePoint. And once it's in Dataverse, of course, we check permissions on SharePoint before we share any answers from that content. However, when you use the bigger button that says SharePoint on the bottom of that page, that is just relying on typical model query and retrieval using the SharePoint index. And that's why I said earlier, you want to make sure that your index is live in SharePoint. Nobody's turned off, in the document library, you have an opportunity to say, don't discover and search. Don't click that, because if it's not in the index, the agent won't see it. So I wanted you to know about those two different variations of how you can add document knowledge to Copilot Studio.